Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from SpeechKids and Raising Orchid Kids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids. And today I am delighted to be talking to Caroline Strauss. Caroline, welcome.
Hello.
I'm going to let you tell us about yourself and what it is that you do, but I do want to flag today we're going to be talking about why people, parents, would need a special education advocate for their early childhood folks. That's like who, 5 and under?
And early childhood being up to like 3rd grade when we think about teaching.
Perfect, 3rd grade. So why would a kindergartner need a special education advocate? But first, introduce yourself.
So I'm Caroline Strauss, and that is what I do. I'm a special education advocate. I work with Untitled Education Group, which serves this area, so DC, Maryland, Virginia, and the whole DMV as it broadens through that. And so I got into this. If we backtrack how I became a special education advocate, I was working in special education. So I've worked in both the public school system and the private school. And I came at that with kind of like two areas. I was a certified special education teacher, and I also have a master's in social work that was focusing in macro social work, which is the systems, organizations, communities, so not necessarily individuals, but kind of how do policies and systems work to support or not support people. So I found myself in kind of a perfect match of those two things, working at a nonprofit that had a therapeutic preschool for children with developmental delays. So I was doing special education and then also working on that nonprofit programming side. But what I found was a lot of these parents who were coming to, the program was housed in a pediatric therapy clinic. So we had any birth to 18, it kind of putters out as they got older, but birth up coming for pediatric speech, OT, and PT at this clinic. And parents would come with their school-age children to their therapist and go, their IEP says this, or this happened at school, what do I do? And the therapist would run back to the person in the back who used to teach in the public school and go, their IEP says this, or this happened at school, what do they do? And so we kind of, out of that, I just started doing that kind of consulting and going, well, let me see their IEP. Well, have they been assessed in this? Can I assess them in that and kind of see if that matches what I'm hearing from the school? Can we ask the school to do this? And so kind of fell into it that way until I ended up here and formally doing it with Untitled Education Group.
Okay, so interesting. Okay, a couple of things. IEP, Individualized Education Plan. Tell us what that is, please.
Yeah, so an IEP is what is all of special education, which we're going to really hit quickly of why would you need or benefit from a special education advocate, is all provided through a federal law of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So everything that a child is provided or it could be entitled to because of a disability in the public school system is kind of stipulated through that federal law. So one of those things is an IEP, the Individual Education Plan. And so that is that child's, quite what it says, that child's individual plan. Where are they now? How are they functioning now? What are the goals? Where do we need them to get? And then what services and supports and all of those things are in place to help them do that and receive a free and appropriate education, which is all those legal words that come through that federal law.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're talking, I am feeling overwhelmed. So I know that when parents come to you, they are also feeling overwhelmed. Are most people coming to you before the IEP process, after the IEP process, or is it a mix?
Huge mix, huge mix. Some of it is, right when we start, we've been identified or, through outside psychologist or a pediatrician or the teacher at school or just us as parents going, something isn't there. And they're at the very starting line and going, okay, how do we do this? Where do we start? Some have been guided through that process at whatever level of guidance was offered in schools and then go, okay, I'm actually not sure what's going on, or maybe we do have a problem with this school and need outside help, or maybe I'm just not sure. And so it's really a mix between the two.
And are you mostly focused on helping families get services through the school system, or are you also hooking them up with private providers if that's needed?
Yeah, absolutely both. Absolutely both. It's really, I think one reason that social work background of mine and special education overall is really going, okay, what's the whole child that we're looking at here? What's, this whole piece, and are you being served here, and are you getting this, and how does that translate into what education looks like? It also isn't explicitly or only public school. There are many private schools that provide services for specific supports for students who have learning differences, but there's also schools that are sometimes just a great fit, because of low class size, or their specific teaching style, like matches a student's learning profile, really depending on the student's needs. So that's some of what we do as well, is say, where would your child get the best support possible?
You're kind of the person who knows what we don't know, right? Like, we don't know what we don't know as parents, and you're the person who knows. You know how to navigate the system. One thing that I was thinking about as you were talking is there are this can get a little bit confusing, and I don't know that we've talked about this much on this, I call it a podcast, right? For lack of a better term, because it's a video interview series. But one of the things we don't talk a lot about is how services provided at school are different from services that are provided privately. Can you sort of delineate those for us a little bit?
Sure. So we look at those with a different lens. So the clinical lens and the school lens, and medical as well. So even the words that we use for a diagnosis could be different of what your doctor is using for a diagnosis, and what your IEP and your school team is saying is the disability your child's receiving services. All kind of different lenses that we're seeing things through. So the education lens, especially when looking at like speech therapy in particular, or OT, those can be called related services. So they're the services that help your child access that curriculum. At school, they're going to be looking at, what does this child need at school, specifically in this setting, to reach the curriculum?
I want you to say that again, because this is the thing, right? This is where, this is why I no longer work in schools. This is also, but again, like, and not to throw any clinician under the bus who is working in a school, but the mission is different.
Yes.
The missions are different. Schools are bound to provide school-related success, academic and social, sort of, maybe a little, right? Success.
According to the law, social, emotional, yes, we can absolutely, I get that a lot. They don't have academic needs, so they were told no. Stop, come, we can help with that. But yes, very much right. In clinic, what you do is, the way I describe it, so you can tell me if I need to tweak this and improve it, but can really look at that full potential in life and say where, maybe fine tuning things that the school's going to say, but they're functional. That fine tuning of that doesn't need to happen here because they're functional at school, and they're not going to maybe qualify for that service at school when they could in a clinic based with that different lens.
That's exactly it. Yes. Thank you. And this is why we have clients and who have both. They have school-based support. Absolutely. And they also get some private assistance, because the areas that we can work on are a little bit different. And yeah, I love what you said, right? We got to look holistically, like, how is this person moving across all of the environments that they find themselves in? And can they really succeed at all of the different places where they go? And people that they
holistic lens, like they can talk to each other, right? Like that school-based speech therapist and that private-based speech therapist don't have to be kind of working in totally divergent ways and not looking at each other. And so I think sometimes too, just that saying, hey, let's connect everyone who is involved with this student and what's working really well at home, or working really well at a clinic-based, or working really well at school. If we can share those things, and hopefully then expedite the progress we see and not like work against each other.
Yeah. And that's where you really come in. Yeah. You're sort of serving as the hub or the quarterback for families a lot of the time. Yeah.
When you said that during one of our conversations, I loved that analogy of really saying, okay, that's where we start is what information do we have? We're very, very data driven. We enjoy kind of getting into what do we know about this child? What do we need to know about this child? And filling in those holes and then saying, yeah, given this read, given this going on, what plays do we need to make sure we have in place? What, do we need to make sure you're connected to happening? What's the game plan there?
And you're making sense of a lot of kind of disparate sources of information too, because you're getting teacher and you're getting parent and you're getting child and you're getting psychologist and all the reports. And you're sort of holding it all in this cauldron.
The cauldron that is our working brain, obviously. Right. Yeah, taking that and saying, what do we do with that?
Yeah. And it's so needed. Because, I mean, listen, I think of myself as a pretty holistic clinician, but again, like my scope is only so big. And yes, I can screen for certain things and I can refer for other things. And I know a lot of stuff about child development. At the end of the day, though, sort of having somebody there who can zoom out, who knows just more, I would say, about like the landscape and sort of the broad, I'm doing this with my hands, this kind of overarching thing, right? That's really where you guys come in. Yeah.
Yes, and I think too, so all of the consultants with Weinfeld Education Group are special education experts. So I think too, there is a whole, I have a undergrad degree, a bachelor's degree in psychology, where I was focused in kind of child and education components in that, a master's in social work that was looking specifically at supporting families of children with learning differences and special healthcare needs. And then received my certification for special education through a kind of shift in careers. So I got certified in that. And still, I got to my first IEP meeting with all of this training, with all of these lenses. And I was like, what's happening? And really is where my like nerd side came in. And I was like, I have to know all of this. And was like, I must read the laws and I need to go to this training and that training and learned all of this. And that's this moment where I go, oh my gosh, you're telling me this parent at the table who's told you're a part of this IEP team, you are part of this decision, you're an expert in your child, but they don't know those words. They don't know these processes and all these other lenses, or to look and say, but how are these pieces fitting together? And so I think that's really where it falls. Their job is parent. Yeah. Their job is usually also something outside of being a parent where they work and have other things. So to then say you also need to have this expert of special education knowledge to advocate for your child or make decisions for your child's education feels extremely overwhelming, and this huge burden of this important decisions for your child. And so I think that's really where we come in, is to say, you don't have to be an expert in that. We are. Let us work with you and kind of take that off your shoulders, let you breathe. Yeah. Well, you give us the information and let us kind of help with what happens with deciding, determining what the best course of action is, and then how do we make that course of action happen? Yeah. Okay. So this sounds like a service that is very expensive. Point. Tell me about that. So that's one thing as well with WEG, is that this service is needed regardless of income. Disability doesn't typically, oh, this person has the funds to handle this. We will work with this.
We will bestow the disability here.
Right, because there is resources to more available resources. And so really there is a sliding scale with WEG to really look at a family and their situation and say, based on that situation, what can be done to be sure that you're still getting these services that you need. There's also a particular program with WEG, with Weinfeld Education Group, called See Us, which is Special Education Excellence for Underserved Students. And it provides free or no cost special education advocacy for Black students who are impacted by systemic racism. It is a really different thing that I'm proud to be an organization that has as well.
Yeah. And I wanted to highlight that because I do think that's it's one of the many things that Weinfeld Education Group is doing quite well. And so I did want to ask you about that. If people want to find WEG or Weinfeld Education Group online and you, where do they do that?
Weinfeld Education Group. And of course, I just have it saved. I should definitely have that. It is .com.
Okay.
wegadvocacy.com. Let me say that again so I get it correct without all my fumbling. wegadvocacy.com, but also of course, Googling Weinfeld Education Group, it'll pop up, but that's our website. And can connect you to whoever you need. And we have a great administrative staff, great parent support folks. Rich Weinfeld himself is great and usually connects with parents as they come through. So anybody you reach out to through that can help kind of guide you. And we provide services. It's important to say, I'm early childhood focused. That's my area of knowledge, but WEG has about 15, I think, total consultants who work on our team. And so we certainly provide advocacy up through high school and have people who have those areas of expertise in different, you wouldn't be getting the best support through me if you but we have somebody who can. And then
I say the same thing to people, like, you don't want me to treat your child's reading disorder. You just don't. I'm not the best person for that.
My first teaching license was kindergarten through 12th grade. And I remember being like, oh, no, like, don't give me the student who needs like just some help in their like calculus class. That will not go well at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's interesting is the people who teach high school think that you and I are crazy and we think the same thing. So it's all good.
Exactly. We have our areas.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, do you have I should have asked you this before we hit record, but do you have like a client success story or a client who stands out in your mind? And can you just kind of walk us through briefly what happened?
Then you get at the heart part of it. And I'm an emotional person just in general. So I'll be careful not to go. I think 2 current clients this year that are kind of those ones where you go, oh, I'm so glad we were able to do that. And so glad I was able to work with the family to see that come to fruition. One is a kiddo who's currently in preschool and will be in pre-kindergarten next year, and got a recommendation from their psychologist and the outside behavioral team that they've been working with for years to maybe consider a change for next school year and making sure that child's getting ready for kindergarten. So not currently receiving special education services. And so that parents came to WEG to say, so we've been given this recommendation. What do we do with that? And so I've been working with them to say, okay, first step, let me learn your child. Let me become an expert in him and in his needs. And then we can see what that looks like. And so in doing that and finding what that best place would look like, and then guiding the parents through the process to set that up for him. And when that all kind of came, and having the meeting with the parents, which is all virtual, which I think can sometimes take some of that away, that feeling or that personal aspect of it, while virtual, and saying, okay, so we've done this and this is what I found. These would be my recommendations for him. This is how that would look. And then it getting put in place and watching the mom just kind of fold in emotion over that and tear up and just knowing how big that was. It was a long time of, little to-do lists for me. And so maybe not always remembering in those little to-do list moments of, okay, check this off. Okay, let's examine this, analyze this, of that kind of overall what just happened of, we know our child needs something, but what is it? Okay, we have somebody help us do that. We figured out what he needs, and now it's going to happen. Of this like release of like, yes, okay, we're there now. And then they looked at me afterwards. They're like, do we do this again next year?
Do you do it again next year?
So it depends.
Kind of.
So this little one will only be in pre-K. And so we absolutely will do it again for kindergarten and say, okay, where are we? But yeah, at some extent, the IEP happens every year, right? Yep. What progress have we made? What do we still need? What do we need to change? And so at different levels next year. But depending on the child, it's definitely something that's ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't always say this to parents, but it is a marathon not a sprint. And it's a marathon with like little sprints built in. So, right, getting ready for this any kind of transition, you're going to have flurry.
At that little, right, at that early age, like our first school experience. Okay, we got through preschool, what's pre-K? Okay, we got through pre-K, what's kindergarten? There's so many.
And that is really a time when it's year by year, because kids are changing so much.
And what school looks like is really changing a lot in those first little years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you've got kids, right, who, at 3, from my perspective, aren't being understood when they're speaking, for example, or aren't really picking up stuff in the environment. Over the course of a year in the right place, they make a ton of progress. Those kids might be ready to go to kindergarten. And then there's another subset who really won't be, and they want to go spend an extra year in preschool, or they want to do whatever they want to do. But it is kind of year by year, very early on. And then, that tail, I think it gets a little bit longer, but
I'm, preaching to the choir here in a conversation with you, but like, that's why early intervention is so big, because I think you can see progress at all levels, and, you put things in place and big gains can be made at all levels, but especially that early intervention. I think there's still so much like elasticity in the child, and you say, okay, we put all these things in place so early at the first signs that maybe we need some education support. So those great leaps and bounds can happen.
Well, and it's interesting because we started off talking about sort of the IEP process, and that whole process is designed to make kids fail first. And then, and that's like sort of, I'm zooming out to 30,000 feet in terms of the system and laws, and okay, fine. But what kids are, what's that?
Prove the need, right? You have to prove the need.
Exactly.
Sometimes to prove the need means there has to be that.
But when we back it up and we catch kids on the rise, if we can catch them early enough, right, when they haven't figured out that they're failing yet, and that's again able to happen, I think, more often on the private side. Certainly, you're in a position to really manipulate in the best possible way, pull the levers that need to be pulled. In order to have a child really experience success and take off in a way where they don't have to experience failure. That is a really, really great space to be in, just in terms of being able to make maximum impact on a kid's life.
And need and failure aren't synonymous with each other, right? You can have a need and be absolutely succeeding. And so I think kind of trying to tease through that and saying, like, let's identify the needs and not wait until we go, well, why are they failing, to try to find that need.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could go all day, but we're going to cut it here. Caroline Strauss, thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. Enjoy chatting with you.